My name is Durbin, and I am a reviewer on YouTube. I used to watch the Arrowverse all the time until all the shows became far too tedious and I quit. But when Crisis on Infinite Earths arrived, promising all kinds of amazing crossovers, I've had to become someone else. I've had to become something else. Welcome to Durbania. I'm Durbin, and this is my spoiler talk review for episodes 4 and 5 of Crisis on Infinite Earths. So you heard that. Spoiler talk. I will be spoiling things, and yes, I will be talking about that cameo, and I'm super excited to talk about that cameo. So when I left off with episodes 1 through 3, the grade I gave those was a B-, and it kind of depended, would it fall into average, into the C area, or would it rise up depending on these last two parts? And the answer is, it fell. I mean, I shouldn't say it that way because it didn't fall a lot. I think as a whole, episodes 1 through 5, I'm going to give a C+. It felt average, but I enjoyed it. Like, it had a lot of things about it that were entertaining. There were a lot of things in this conclusion that just felt rushed and I didn't care for. And then there were a lot of things in these conclusions that I actually thought were really quite cool. So it did kind of go back and forth a little bit for me, but it didn't quite win me over where I'm going to continue watching these shows when this is over. You know, it's not like I'm counting down the days until we do the next giant crossover. But I gotta be honest, I did enjoy myself in watching this Crisis on Infinite Earths. Within the first few minutes, I think Oliver Queen became one of the most interesting characters in the fact that he became the Spectre. On the one hand, I kind of wish we got more of him becoming the Spectre and seeing him adjust to these abilities and actually seeing him transform into the character. Because really, it was just Oliver sitting at the campfire with the dude who was the Spectre, and then Oliver's eyes turn green and he sees all these fights that he's done, and so he becomes the Spectre. And I just kind of feel like it should be more, mostly because it's Oliver Queen. It's not just him becoming another DC Comics character, the Spectre. This is Oliver Queen. And my gosh, especially seasons 1 and 2 of Arrow, which are my absolute favorite seasons of all time. Like, he's just an incredible character. So this is his send-off. And so because it's his send-off, I would love to have gotten more of him becoming the Spectre. More of what does that mean? More of what is the weight that is coming upon his shoulders and becoming the Spectre. And kind of just seeing those abilities. This is Oliver Queen's swan song. He's gone now. Like, his show is over. And so for this being his send-off, there's that part of me that's like, I wish we just dug a little deeper into that. Maybe since we did 3 parts before Christmas, maybe you do 3 parts after and have one whole part dedicated to Oliver becoming the Spectre. I'm just tossing that out there. Which, that reminds me of a point that I almost forgot. One of the reasons I think this is a C+ for me instead of a B- as a whole, the Christmas break was unnecessary, especially because it was the last 2 episodes. Episode 1 through 3 had a momentum, and I got caught up in that momentum, and then they broke that momentum by waiting until after Christmas. Now, I get it. They wanted to draw us all back in, so I understand what they were thinking, but it just didn't work for me. Like, I lost that momentum, and I didn't quite recover it coming back into this, and there just wasn't enough in these final 2 episodes that just pulled me in the same way those other 3 episodes did. They were just full of so many glorious cameos. So I just don't think it was worth it to wait over Christmas to get to this. It destroyed that momentum. Maybe I would have liked this better if I just binged all 5 back to back to back, but I don't know. With that momentum broken, trying to get back in, trying to say goodbye to Oliver Queen without, getting deeper into the Spectre and what he's become and his destiny and all that, it's just kind of like, okay. And then the other thing is, immediately he comes back, he taps Barry on the head so that Barry, his potential is unlocked and they could go into the Speed Force. But what does that mean that his potential is unlocked? I didn't see that too much in this Crisis on Infinite Earths, other than he was able to actually get into the Speed Force. But I didn't see any exploration of what does that mean that Barry's powers are unlocked. I get this is a TV show, so perhaps as The Flash continues, we'll see results of that. But in Crisis on Infinite Earths, the way they did that setup, it's kind of like you want to see it in Crisis on Infinite Earths. But it was kind of cool when he dived into the Speed Force and, it's infinite, so really it's all about being connected by memories, and so he's got to go find his team. So it was kind of interesting to do that, but it also cut us off from seeing like Oliver Queen's power as the Spectre. So I kind of was disappointed in that. Plus, it was kind of weird, right? They enter the Speed Force, they drop off Supergirl, Lex Luthor, and that dude on that planet. And so that happened. But then all of a sudden, real quick clip, anti-monitor, brrr! And then all of a sudden, they're all broken apart like it was this big thing. And it happened so fast. And I was like, what? I mean, I caught on to it, but I was just like, oh, was that a big battle? We didn't even see them separate. So it just took a bit. I was like, really? Come on. I feel like I'm just crapping all over this. So let me say this part that is really cool. In that Speed Force, and Barry goes back to the lab, and boom, there's Ezra Miller. What was so cool about that is the connection between the CW universe and the DCEU. That was awesome, man. I mean, even when I was rewatching it to get the clips that I'm, putting here, I was just joyous to see Ezra Miller's Flash pop into this scene and to see, the both Flashes kind of complimenting each other's costumes and talking. Like, it was just so cool to have that interaction and that acknowledgement of the DCEU. So I thought that was really cool. I really did enjoy that. That cameo was so awesome. But I'm pretty convinced that the DCEU is just going to ignore that altogether. Like, this never ever happened. And I think the CW's kind of gonna go forward. Like, yeah, wasn't that a cool cameo? It was, right? But that's in the past. Moving on, I just kind of feel like that's what's going to happen. As cool as it was, it's not going to have any impact on the movies, and it's not going to have any impact on the show. But nonetheless, the scene, just take it by itself, Ezra Miller having a cameo on The Flash, meeting The Flash, Grant Gustin, it was cool. And I was joyous to see it. So I really did enjoy that moment.
Found Barry Allen. No! What does that mean? How can this...
This should be impossible.
I found Lex Luthor a bit more tolerable in this episode. Maybe it was because now my expectations were adjusted a little bit, but I'm still angry that we had to get rid of the Brandon Routh Superman to have this Lex Luthor there. It just wasn't worth it to me. So we gave this Lex Luthor superpowers because he read it in the book and changed his reality, so he shoots beams out of his hands and stuff. It's like, why do that? Just put in Brandon Routh. It would have been so much better to have had him there. I don't know. Maybe Supergirl, the TV show, it'll add something. The fact that, he was this paragon of truth and wrote himself in as this paragon of truth. So maybe that's where the effects will be. But as somebody that's not going to continue on watching that show, man, I'm still heartbroken that Brandon Routh was not the paragon of truth that was promised. So I still had that disappointment, but I found Luthor a bit more tolerable as we got into this. Again, probably because my expectations were adjusted. The second death of Oliver Queen. That's kind of confusing to even say those words because, his body died. Now we got his spirit in purgatory and he becomes the Spectre, and then the Spectre dies. So he dies twice. Does this mean, did his soul leave his soul and now he goes to another place? Or this is like his essence is dead and now he has no afterlife anywhere, and that was his ultimate sacrifice, that now he ceased to exist altogether. But putting that confusion aside, because that's probably just reading way too much into it, the sacrifice of Oliver Queen, it was pretty cool.
You have failed this universe.
Cheesy, but kind of cool. And the other thing that was interesting is his sacrifice, his death, his laying his life down for his friends brought about a new creation. It brought about a brand new universe. The symbolism in that is what Jesus did. The fact that Jesus, his sacrifice for us, births a new creation in us. His sacrifice, his resurrection, ushered in a new world. And in that new world, the walls of division are torn down. The division between us and our fellow man, torn down. We are one in Christ. The division between us and God, torn down, because Christ brings us to God when we accept him into our lives. So the walls are torn down. Oliver Queen's death, his sacrifice, saved his friends. It created a brand new world, a new creation for them, and it tore down the walls. Where Supergirl was in this CBS universe, like her own Earth and all that, those walls are torn down, and now she's on the same Earth as the Flash. Instead of them separate on all these Earths, those walls of division are torn down, and a brand new world, a brand new universe has been created. And now these characters all live on the same Earth. I liked the symbolism in that, and that was just something I thought of as I was watching that. Oliver's sacrifice made a new creation. It made a new life. Jesus' sacrifice made a new creation. It made a new life. It tore down the walls of division. And really, I think that is kind of a good way to say goodbye to a character that started this entire thing. He started this whole universe, so it makes sense that his death and his sacrifice would create a brand new universe for them to operate in. So I think it was a good way to say goodbye to Oliver Queen. In his actual death scene, I didn't really feel emotion, but, you know, it was saying goodbye to Stephen Amell in this universe, and it's kind of cool to see what that's going to spawn going forward. And really, for episode 5, like, episode 5 was just the episode I didn't hate it, but I didn't like it either. Episode 4, at least, was interesting, going through the Speed Force, the sacrifice of Oliver, and it had interesting things and story points going on. The most interesting things for me about episode 5 was them finding out they're all in the same Earth, the new universe that they all now live in, and then the formation of the Justice League at the very end. For me, those were the highlights of episode 5, and what I enjoyed most. Things like Bebo. You know, I haven't been watching Legends of Tomorrow, and I guess that's a Legends character. I don't know. Like, but out of context, seeing it just magically appear, Crisis on Infinite Earths, it's like, what is this? It's a bank-robbing magician making this a little... None of this is making sense to me. And again, probably because I'm not watching the show. So if you're a big fan of these shows and you've been watching them, maybe that was an epic moment for you. For someone like me that kind of stopped watching these shows a while back and coming in for Crisis on Infinite Earths, I'm like, what in the green earth is going on right now? But at the end, them all being on the same Earth, Barry getting together that awesome round table for the Justice League, that was pretty darn epic. And I enjoyed that. And so that was one of the redeeming factors too, was seeing all of these characters sit together at this table and knowing that I'm interested to watch, you know, Superman and Lois. This kind of makes me look forward to what is that show going to do? How's that all going to be incorporated? I don't feel like Crisis on Infinite Earths really pulled me back into the universe. I did enjoy it. I was entertained by it. It was a pretty cool ending. I had to look up Gleek. I had no idea who that was. Kind of a fun cameo. And I thought it was really fun, the fact that even Ryan Reynolds' Green Lantern got thrown a bone. You know, like, yes, this exists on another Earth. And so that was kind of cool. And their whole montage of all the other Earths and all the other DC shows and things like that that have existed, like, I like that. Like, all that stuff paying tribute to it, even though I haven't really watched all those shows, even though I may not have liked the Green Lantern with Ryan Reynolds, to see it kind of pay homage to that stuff was pretty slick. So there's a lot of things in Crisis on Infinite Earths that I think was done well, and it did a good job reaching the nostalgia and DC fans and DC nerds like myself. It's like it did a good job reaching out to those fans. Did it feel like it delivered for me in all story points? No. So that's why for me it's average. That's why as a whole I'm giving it a C+. I was entertained. I enjoyed it. I don't feel like I have to watch it again, and the only thing I'm interested in going forward right now is Superman and Lois. So that's kind of my thoughts as a whole with Crisis on Infinite Earths. Now, what would you give it? Would you go higher than a C+? Would you go lower than a C+? Let's talk about that in the comments. While you're there, hit that subscribe button to become a Durbanian. Hit the bell by the subscribe button so you're notified the next time I do a movie review, theological analysis, ranking video, or anything else I do here. I'm Durbin. Thanks for checking out Durbania.